Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Rich here, and you're watching this video because, well, I uploaded it. But all seriousness, if you've already or you're watching this, you've already heard about XDefiant. So I'm gonna give my thoughts on it from my perspective and what I thought could have been a lot better about the game from the fan perspective, the Ubisoft perspective, and all those things. I'm gonna keep the intro short and sweet like Trish Stratus. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Alright, quick little thing I want to say before we get into this section. If you do hear, that's my script that I have for this video, so please don't mind that if you hear it. In this first section, getting into exactly what is happening after a full game release on May 21st of this year, Ubisoft announced on Tuesday, December the 3rd, that XDefiant was indeed coming to an end. Now, it's not funny, but one of the weirdest things about it is that there was a rumor going around a few months ago, I believe, maybe it was in September, might have been in October, that came out and said that XDefiant would potentially shut down soon because of the player count. Mark Rubin, of course, denied that claim, and obviously it must have been inside talk because, well, here we are now, unfortunately. Most people found out, like myself, through social media or Reddit. And if you didn't find out then you found out the next day, December the 4th, as Ubisoft and the XDefiant team, they sent out an email to people that had a Ubisoft account, and it went as followed. Dear players, thank you for your incredible dedication and support of XDefiant. We regret to inform you that we initiated the sunset process on December 3rd, 2024. As a result, new downloads and player registrations and purchases will no longer be available. Season 3 will still launch, so stay tuned for more updates to come. The servers will remain active, and the game will be fully playable until June 3rd, 2025, which is on a Tuesday. Got your girl in the club, she choosing, etc. For those who purchased the Ultimate Founders Pack, you will receive a full refund. Additionally, players who have made VC and DLC purchases since November the 3rd, 2024 will also be fully refunded. Please note that processing these refunds will take up to 8 weeks. For more details on refunds, please visit our website, xdefiant.com. Thank you for being a part of our journey, the XDefiant team. And I should also note that, yeah, all purchases made within the last 30-ish days, going back to December the 3rd, so November 3rd onward, you'll get your refund, but it'll probably take a little longer. So just to reiterate some key info in the email for y'all, the sunset process began on December the 3rd, 2024, basically meaning that any and most future support for the game is pretty much ending soon. This is not including the Season 3 update, which will still happen, and it will be the last big update for XDefiant. New downloads, player registrations, and purchases will not be available, and the servers will stay up and the game will be playable until Tuesday, June 3rd, 2025. Now, in the email in the refund department, in Mark Rubin's statement, he said that anybody who made a purchase within going back to November the 3rd up until December the 3rd, anybody who made a purchase from that point to that point would get a full refund. Refunds could take up to 8 weeks and probably longer because there are a lot of people that likely made purchases, so you'll have to be patient, unfortunately, in that situation. Unfortunately, this situation is just so sad, especially for those who really worked hard to bring this game to life. The people that'll have to get redirected to another Ubisoft department, or people that are just going to get fired, because there are people that are getting laid off, which is just, you hate to see it. You never want to see somebody just get laid off from the job they do, especially in gaming. People have a passion, and unfortunately that's just how the world is, sadly. The loyal fans that really were invested into the game, the people who wanted something that didn't have to be a direct competitor to COD, just something that felt different, something that didn't have to be the COD Killer, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the video. A game that was unique and stood out in its own way for a little bit of time. Although I wasn't great at the game, and I've said that a lot, but the few times that I played it, which I did play it once on here, it was still pretty fun. Just unfortunate circumstances for a game that, in my opinion, didn't really get the respect it deserved from fan perspectives that thought this game was going to be the COD competitor, the COD Killer, if you will, because of other YouTubers kind of giving that idea. And then the other perspective of Ubisoft, which I don't feel they don't feel that they put enough effort into keeping the game interesting for the general public, and we'll also talk about that in a little bit. Getting into this next section, the mini timeline kind of XDefiant. COD Killer was the term coined by a lot of people, especially on YouTube, when word of mouth started spreading about this game. This was during the calendar year for MW2 2022, which is basically October 2022 to September 2023. Infinity Ward you rat bastards. So it gave people something that was interesting to look forward to. In a time period for Call of Duty that was filled with no communication for multiplayer, unneeded changes, glitches, and all sorts of other rapscallion activities, it seemed like competition is something refreshing, and that's what it was for a bit. It's what XDefiant was for a little bit. And you also got to keep in mind the game itself, the concept of it goes back to around 2020 and 2021, and in 2021 PC users actually had some beta things for them, and eventually the beta started ramping up in 2020, 2023. My first experience with the beta was in April of 23. They did have a few setbacks, but eventually they would release the game on May 21st, 2024 on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. The main thing that stuck out about it for me was that it was free. Think of it like Fortnite or Rocket League, kind of free, transactions within the game, but it's not really skill wise. It's more so skin wise or character wise. You could make your character look cool and stuff like that. As time went on, the game stuck true to its identity, even up to now, an arcade style first person shooter, which was very different compared to COD, unless it was like Sledgehammer Games comparisons, which they kind of have a similar style in the way they like their style to be very fast paced, speedy like. XDefiant went on to do pretty well and had a plethora of modes, including Escort, Zone Control, Domination, Occupy, Bomb, Hotshot, CTF, and Team Deathmatch, and it also had Practice Zone, Ranked and Unranked. And we will talk about the modes at the end of the video, so if you want to stick around for that and you're interested in my channel, stay tuned to that. I got an idea that I want to bring back. Also, funny enough, Practice Zone was still a work in progress even up to now, which is very, very funny for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah. It also had a lot to offer in weapons and characters and maps, but somehow we ended up here. And getting into this next section, one of the reasons we ended up here is because of the term COD Killer and the fan perspective that ties into this. In my opinion, it ruined the game from the start. One of the things that was done, which I feel is and still is unfair, is XDefiant before the betas was compared to COD. Before the betas really started taking off in 2023, it's like comparing a NBA rookie of today. Like, let's say I got drafted to the NBA and I had a bunch of skills, comparing me to LeBron James. That's how unfair it was. And for the time, those expectations should have been a lot lighter than what was going on. Those wordings and comps, it didn't allow the game to build its own identity via word of mouth. So when you would watch YouTube, you see people say, oh, this could be COD's next competitor. And it was when, beta was only for PC at that point. They had betas for PC. It wasn't fair to them and to the fans to do all of these early comparisons. It just didn't feel right. And obviously, where we are now, that sentiment has aged very well. It was just immediately, ooh, COD, be ready, COD's in trouble. The thing that needs to be learned from this, and I will say this, the thing that needs to be learned is that next time we have a new FPS game, no matter the style, whether it's like COD or if it's an arcade FPS, let it be its own thing first instead of immediately saying, COD, be on the lookout, spooky. And if it does happen, it happens. Not every game is meant to be at the top of the mountain. Some games don't have to get to the top. Some could near it. You don't have to be COD to be in the FPS industry. You just gotta find a unique identity, build a fan base, communicate with that fan base, and just make sure you keep it trill with them, and you could create a really good fan base. Obviously bad people come and go, but you think of FPS games or just any sort of shooter games that have multiplayer modes in them, Overwatch, XDefiant, obviously, and Halo, those are good examples of communities that are still built. And unfortunately, this one, XDefiant, is going to be, kind of GONE. And some of the earliest memories I do have about hearing of XDefiant was in the near beginning of 2023, very tail end of 2022. The things I often remember hearing was that it was a work in progress FPS game that could be a rival to COD. The few that I watched rarely talked about this game like that, but as Carl Johnson says in GTA San Andreas, the world is bigger than this hood, and others may have gave off that COD Killer impression to others in the gaming world, because the gaming world is so big with the internet and how many places there are to talk about games now, whether it would be on Reddit or Twitter or, well, now X, or even in Discord rooms. Because of the route this game took, it was likely interpreted as that. The two have very different priorities and playstyles, as I already described, along with COD varying year by year with different studios taking main control of the game. Right now, for example, Black Ops 6 is Treyarch's game. I believe Infinity Ward is next year. Brother, with this assumption, this game would be a COD killer. In general, this hurt the game once it came out, along with other things which we'll get to in a bit. Ultimately, people were sold a fake dream by some when that dream never existed in the first place. That dream was never meant to be a thing in the first place. And others like me, we're just not good at the game, and we're very inconsistent with playing. Like playing again and then not playing and then playing at random points. The COD Killer and the fan perspective is one of many problems this game ultimately faced. And there's the Ubisoft and XDefiant perspective. Before we bring up the things that hurt this game from this perspective, I must say they did some great things. They did some really good things, and I do want to shout out Mark Rubin, because he did a hell of a job running this game, being kind of the head honcho of this whole idea / concept, and working with people to bring it to life. Communication between the devs and the fans, it was always on point, since obviously Call of Duty, their devs, they vary every year, because like I said earlier, the studios take turns making being the head studio developers for each game. They added features that were wanted via the fans for the most part. There is one that I'm going to bring up in a little bit. And they lowered the rate of skill-based matchmaking in this game, which was the main thing that drew a lot of people to want to play this game, and was the main thing XDefiant tried to stand out about. And with skill-based matchmaking, it basically hurts you by making even a casual room a sweat fest if you win a random amount of games in a row. Call of Duty infamously has SBMM, and they haven't turned the rate of it down in a long time. Everybody complains about it every year. I'm pretty sure XDefiant probably has a little bit of SBMM, but it's probably not as high as it is in Call of Duty. And there was also a lot to offer mode-wise. Obviously, we already kind of gave those examples. However, there was also the other area in this perspective. And it's funny because most of my complaints with this game were named in the video I did in the middle half of this year, like 5-6 months ago. And if you want to check that out, I'll leave it here in this part of the video. I'm not going to relist those complaints. You can go check it out for yourself. Most of those things are still relevant now, which it says a lot. And one of those things that I did mention, which I'll bring it up now, and we go back to the point of things that were wanted via the fans. One of the things that never got added in this game, and I think it's critical for an FPS game, any FPS game, we never had an instant replay camera. And to me, this also ties into the point of this game felt rushed. It didn't feel like Ubisoft, they didn't feel like they were taking their time on this game, because they just felt the pressures. When this game came out, it was the summer, and so when Call of Duty comes out, it has its run in October, usually the last week of October, does its thing, takes over for a little bit. They're still airing ads now for it, so we'll see if that continues with the current Black Ops game, which it seems to be doing really well with a lot of people, obviously with your usual complaints, but it's just, it felt rushed. There were a lot of things like practice mode, for example, was one of those things. It was still labeled with work in progress. 5 to 6 months after the initial release of this game came out back in May of this year. That says a lot. The characters were still too small, etc., etc. Again, I'm not gonna list them. I'll just leave that example. But to go back to the other point of instant replay, that's one of those key things in the game you need to have, because people need to know how they get clapped in the game. Pause. We need to see the other perspectives, and fans and players not being able to see that hurt this game substantially more than anybody could have imagined. Easily one of the things that could have helped this game a lot was adding an instant replay camera, and maybe would have gotten added next year, but it's one of those things that should have been added immediately. It shouldn't have taken a year or 8 months or 9 months or whatever. That's a key feature that should have been in this game. And I guess with other things in this sequence, new maps did get added, which was good. Obviously, challenges were there. Weapons, they still feel the same mostly. The servers I will say improved a lot. Like, they have gotten a lot better than they were obviously when the game first dropped, so I will say that. Although it can take long to get in certain lobbies depending on what mode you're playing, the servers have improved a lot though, and everything seemed nearly the same as it was when the game first came out. In this perspective, I guess they kind of kept it like that because you wanted to create a familiarity with your players that were already playing, and for newer players that were going to come along and play the game. And obviously it's free to play. Obviously things like the home screen would get kind of changed up a little bit, but most like the layout of the game was the same as it was when it first came out, which was just in May. So and then there was also the other perspective here that they didn't know what the future was for this game, so maybe they just decided, hey, we're gonna keep this setup layout the way it is, and we'll see how it goes once we hit 2025. Obviously that's not going to happen for this game with newer updates, as we talked about earlier in the video. The FPS market is pretty tough though, and the pressure is on, because you think of FPS or even just any kind of shooter game like Call of Duty, Fortnite technically is one, although it's battle royale, same kind of things. So it's hard. The pressure's on. Overwatch, Halo, Counter-Strike Go, all these games, the pressure was on, and unfortunately it didn't help in this situation, and it sucks. But for a free-to-play game, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. I still like it. I've gotten a little bit better at it, obviously, but it wasn't bad for a free-to-play game. I will say that. Just in a bad predicament of unreal expectations in a timeline that really hurt this game, unfortunately. And the last little thing I wanted to say in this section, from the company perspective and XDefiant perspective, I said that Ubisoft, I feel like they didn't do enough for the game. The timeline for me has been so messed up when I had to look back and do my scripting for this video. My dumbass thought this game came out last year, but that was because we were playing betas at that point. The game only came out in May. Like, that wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago. That was the point of the year when there were all sorts of tornado warnings popping up nearly every other week where I am. Weather was crazy down here, man. Ubisoft didn't do enough to promote the game. That was something that also hurt this game. Obviously, it was a thing that was still new. And even when it goes off and the servers are done in June, it'll be fresh off of the 1 year celebration, just like the month prior to it. One of the things that I felt could have helped this game was advertising. And you think about things in life, like food places that you might like, anything, health and beauty products, all sorts of things have advertisements. You think of Apple, all the commercials they air help spread the word about iPhones and iPads and iMacs, and whether it's on your YouTube or if it's on a streaming service like Netflix, or if the ad is on television, cable TV, broadcast television like ABC. Even with Call of Duty, for example, they have ads everywhere you look. And with XDefiant, I cannot remember a time where I was watching YouTube and then, hey, it's XDefiant. It might have happened like once or twice, and that was when the game first came out. Advertisement and advertising your game, it matters. And you need to have your product out there so people know what you're about and who you are, so you can establish that identity. And it may cost you money, but ultimately it would have probably helped a lot because the game was free. Like, the game set records when it first came out. You have to really lock in when the game also comes out, and I don't think Ubisoft did that. The key thing, again, advertising, it matters. And unfortunately, Ubisoft didn't have the money, and they just decided not to. They can't let that happen. Anybody that comes out with a future FPS game with the kind of ideal mindset like XDefiant, you need to advertise the game. You need to advertise it on websites, television, streaming services, on-demand services, even billboards, local TV. You need to advertise the game, and they did not do that at all. It wasn't very much, at least in a general perspective, and that's something that was highly disappointing in my opinion from Ubisoft. Very awful decision. Even if they couldn't afford it, find a way, if you get what I'm saying. So it's just very disappointing. All right, and before we get out of here with today's video, I'm glad that you guys watched, and I hope that you all enjoyed. One of the things I mentioned earlier was that I was going to talk about something with the modes later on in the video, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. One of the things I said I would do with XDefiant when it first came out was that I was going to do a let's play or playthrough style with the modes in this game. Obviously the modes: escort, zone control, domination, occupy, bomb, hotshot, CTF, and team deathmatch. We're going to play through each of those modes, at least 1 or 2 videos in each mode, just to kind of show it off, since, you know, XDefiant's going to be gone in about another 5 to 6 months at least, excuse me. So we're going to do that, and yeah, all that good stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to make it rain on the like button and subscribe. And if you do subscribe, hit the little bell that's next to my name so you get notifications when I upload on the channel. Right now we are on Astro's Playroom. That video, or let's play, excuse me, I was gonna say that video game, although it technically is the same, rhyming accidentally. That let's play / playthrough is almost over. We're on GPU Jungle Part 1. Part 2 will be coming next week. One of the last things I'm going to leave y'all with is I'm going to leave you all with the statement from Mark Rubin, where he talked about everything. He gave his thoughts via Twitter. So listen to that for a few minutes, and then we'll hit the outro music. So thank y'all for watching. See y'all in the next video. Peace. Hello, XDefiant fans. I'm unfortunately here today to announce that XDefiant will be shutting down. He goes on to reiterate some of the same info that we have already talked about. The deadline date, also obviously like refunds and all that stuff. So let's get into his other actual thoughts. A few years ago, Ubisoft and the SF dev team embarked on a bold adventure to develop a new arcade shooter called XDefiant. It was from the start an incredible challenge. Not only were we trying to shake up the genre by removing skill-based matchmaking while bringing back a more old-school arcade shooter experience, but we were also diving into the high-risk or high-reward, realm of free-to-play. And for that, I want to applaud not only the dev team, but also Ubisoft leadership for taking that chance. Free-to-play in particular is a long journey. Many free-to-play games take a long time to find their footing and become profitable. It's a long journey that Ubisoft and the teams working on the game were prepared to make until very recently. But unfortunately, the journey became too much to sensibly continue. I am, of course, heartbroken to have to be writing this post. Yes, this game has been a personal passion for me for years, and yes, I know that not all challenges lead to victory, but I also want to recognize all of the developers who are being affected by this closure. Each and every one of them is a real person with a real life separate from our own. And they have all put so much of their own passion into making this game. And I hope that they can be proud of what they did achieve. I know that I will always be proud and grateful to have worked with such a great team, a team that really punched above its weight class. And what they achieved is truly remarkable. The early response from players when XDefiant launched was amazing. We broke internal records for the fastest game to surpass 5 million users, and in the end, we had over 15 million players play our game. That is something to be extremely proud of, especially considering how tough this genre is. So, thank you to all of the developers who put their passion into making this game. If there's one thing I hope we can all take away from this experience is the importance of open, honest communication between developers and players. This player first mentality, along with respectful, non toxic conversations between developers and players, has been the standout differences that made XDefiant so special. From my very first post about XDefiant, I saw the vision I wanted to champion, and I hope it leaves a positive mark on how the game industry treats its players. I don't know what that was. Sorry. To our players, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, I want to express my deepest gratitude for the incredible community that has grown around XDefiant. Your passion, creativity, and dedication have inspired us in every step of the way. With the utmost of love and respect, Mark.